Hello and welcome to today's Charlie Mike series offered to you by the National Veteran Small Business Coalition. I am thrilled to present to you Anatalia from Kanda Consults, and she's going to talk to us about mastering the federal proposal development process. That sounds like a mouthful, Anatalia, and I know you're going to peel back the onion and explain everything. So does that mean that you're going to be able to guarantee to our listening audience that, hey, if I get this process down, I'm just going to get all of these wonderful proposals, just lobbing into my inbox?
What I guarantee is an improved proposal process and understanding of the proposal process that will help get you closer to those wins.
Awesome sauce. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows that this is, we have a wonderful sponsor, BAE Systems, who is able to bring our subject matter experts like Anatalia here to our Charlie Mike series. And so at this, Anatalia, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to go into stealth mode here, and I'm going to let you kind of take it away. And I look forward to learning the process. I always like to learn something new. So okay, I'll see you at the end of the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Marie. Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be hosting this training for NVSBC. We, like Marie said, are going to go through the proposal development process. And to accompany today's session, there's a sample proposal process I've created through my firm, Kanda Consulting, which you can reach out to myself or Marie to access. The goal is for that sample handout, along with this session, to help you get a jump start on building winning proposal responses. So first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Anatalia Macik. I've been in the business development or BD space for over 15 years. I've supported large integrators, small 8As, and everything in between. The industries I've supported include environmental engineering, various IT disciplines, marketing and communications, and security detection. All of that has been for international, commercial, and federal civilian bids. So there are very few types of proposals that I have not seen. I've also managed, mentored, hired proposal teams from as small as only one other person to as large as 20 people across the country. One of my passions, as well as my specialty, is building high-performing teams. So let's dive in. First, we'll discuss what are proposals, why do they exist, and why is the language around them so confusing? I don't have an exact answer for that last one, but we'll at least explain some of it. Then we'll break down solicitation requirements because that's how we build our proposals. We'll also dive into step-by-step proposal development best practices. I'm going to highlight a little bit about the type of team you need in place to develop proposals. And finally, we'll talk about some common mistakes everyone makes and how to avoid them. Based on my experience, I'm going to share with you all how I look at proposals. It's important that we level set, not just for this training, but when you go back to your firms, making sure everyone understands the importance and purpose of proposals in the same way is highly beneficial. So first, what can proposals do? They can help not only highlight your firm's capabilities to customers and competitors or even partners, but they can also help your internal teams better understand and define your corporate capabilities. Through proposals, you can also introduce new cutting-edge solutions. Again, not just externally, but internally as well. Sometimes the internal benefits of proposals are lost or minimized, but those benefits can be just as impactful, like bringing together experts from across teams to collaborate, iterate, and develop those new cutting-edge solutions. All of that also helps to reinforce your company's strategy. By identifying and tracking work that best suits your firm's capabilities and expertise, you can define a clear strategy every year. And of course, last but never least, bidding on work via proposals can lead to new revenue. They're also sometimes required to keep existing revenue through recompetes. Now let's talk about the language briefly. Because my experience is fairly broad, you'll hear me use a lot of these terms which are not strictly federal civilian terms. For instance, a tender is an RFP in Europe or in certain commercial industries. Whenever I say customer or client, for me, that's interchangeable with the government. A proposal is a bid, is a response. A solicitation or RFP is not a proposal. Vendors, offers, bidders, contractors, those are all of the groups vying to win work. Let's continue breaking down language and dive into solicitations specifically. Solicitation documents take a lot of different forms, and the terms tend to be used interchangeably, but they do not all mean the same thing. For instance, market research and sources sought usually come out first, and an RFP can follow them. Previously, market research and sources sought were like surveys, and a subset of the respondents would then be sent the RFI. However, over time, they've become interchangeable. I've seen RFIs even call themselves market research within the clearly labeled RFI document, and vice versa. The same goes for RFQs and RFPs. Historically, and still in certain industries, an RFQ is truly a request for quote and does not typically include a written proposal. However, in the federal civilian market, we do see RFQs that look very much like RFPs. It can be quite confusing if you or your company are moving between client types or industries. But at the end of the day, all these solicitation documents have the same goal, and that is to understand if your company can provide the solutions they're looking for. For the purpose of this session, we're going to focus solely on RFPs, although all solicitation documents usually have these elements, with the exception of RFI, sources sought, and market research, which do not include evaluation criteria because they're not evaluating the responses for an award. But let's break down the requirements. First, there are the technical requirements. Usually, this is your SOW or PWS, and it explains the work that needs to be done. It might also be referred to as a SOO, Statement of Objectives. This section is not always addressed in proposal responses, but it should be considered as the proposal is developed. Next are the instructions, and this is usually what tells you whether or not to respond to those technical requirements, as well as how to structure your overall proposal response. That may include specific sections, page counts, formatting, even how to package and submit your proposal. This is the primary area we focus on to determine compliance. I'm sure you've heard about compliance, and we'll talk about that throughout this conversation. Lastly, here we have evaluation criteria. This is how your customer is going to determine whether or not to buy your solution. This is also a component of compliance in that the easier it is for your customer to find what they're looking for, the easier it is for you to win and for them to justify your win. There are also other sections of solicitation documents that should always be reviewed. You may find personnel criteria, working hours, or other stipulations about the work or the required proposal response throughout the solicitation documents. So while these are best to start with, you never want to ignore the rest of the solicitation documents. Here are a few examples of what the language in each of these elements looks like. So the requirements are typically where you see those shall statements. Again, that does not mean you have to write to each of these if the instructions or evaluation criteria do not say so. But you will need to review and understand these requirements in order to develop your proposal. The best example is when you have a 20-page requirements document, but a 10-page limit on your proposal response. It is not possible, nor is it expected, that each shall statement will be addressed. What you can remember is responding to the requirements makes you responsive. Addressing the instructions and evaluation criteria makes you compliant. To win, you often need to do both. Quickly, I want to touch on the acquisition landscape. It's definitely evolved since my first proposal, and it continues to evolve every day. The one thing that does not change is that the more clearly we can address our customers' needs while creating an engaging proposal response that demonstrates value, the closer we are to a win. And speaking of winning, to position your company for a win, it's important to have a winning strategy. That includes analysis of your company, your customer, and your competition. So I like to keep things simple, especially if you're building new processes. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. A simple SWOT analysis will help you better understand your company's position and your competitors. You only have to do it. You can start with this slide as a template. Work through what you're great at. Those are your strengths. Issues or challenges you need to overcome. Those are your weaknesses. New solutions you've developed or where you have an advantage over the competition. Those are your opportunities. And lastly, where your competition may have an advantage over you or where you've had a failure that is not yet resolved. Those are your threats. Be honest as you go through these areas. It's important to develop your SWOT analysis through the lens of your customer. What would they say about you in each area? Sometimes pulling in people across your firm who are not directly tied to the opportunity you're bidding can give you a better perspective. And once you've completed the analysis on yourself, do it for each of your primary competitors. You may even choose to do it for potential partners as you build your team. In addition to a SWOT analysis, it is critical you not only request debriefs from your customers on winning and losing bids, but you have to analyze them as well. Figure out the trends. Are you often higher in price or lower? Is your staff approach rated high, but your technical approach low? Figure out the trends and develop a plan to improve where needed and expand the good across other bids. You can also use this data to help inform your SWOT analysis. Once we've gone through the solution, we understand our strategy. Now it's time to develop the proposal. First, you want to have a repeatable process in place. The handout for this session will give you a jump start on that. Proposals require a lot of communication and collaboration across multiple departments: HR, pricing, contracts, operations, business development. It's so easy for chaos to ensue when you have a lot of people working together on a deadline-driven project with sometimes independent or possibly competing priorities. Do you remember being in school and getting assigned a group project? Most people didn't get engaged until right before it was due, and everyone got stressed because it was half their grade, especially the one person who'd been pulling it together all on their own up until that last minute panic set in for everyone else. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you guys, but you cannot rely on one person to pull together a bid. They may be able to do successfully a few times, but they will burn out, especially if you're trying to grow your company and are bidding on higher and higher volumes of work. So let's break down the process. It starts before the solicitation is released with some of the topics we've already discussed. The first part of any proposal development process is research. To develop a successful bid, you need to get as much data as possible on the customer, the work to be done, and the competitive landscape. A strong customer relationship will give you more detailed data. If you don't know what the customer is looking for, your proposal will likely not be a winning one. Once you've researched, you can align the requirements to your company's strengths. This will help you build out your solution and can also be used to start shaping the opportunity. If there are RFIs released for the opportunity, you can respond to them with recommended requirements aligned to your strongest offerings. But more than that, you can have informal customer meetings to develop what you feel would best solve your customers' pain points. White papers and unsolicited proposals are a great way to do this, much better than bidding on a formal RFP just to get your name in front of the customer. And once you have that formal RFP, we go back to focus on communication. After reading the solicitation documents, I first figure out the schedule. How many reviews, when do we submit, are regular stand-ups needed? I also work through assignments and confirm that the individuals tagged in are truly available to support the response. The proposal response outline, whether it's a written document, oral presentation, or even a video proposal, the outline of what we're going to say must align to the instructions and evaluation criteria first. Then, any solutioning, win themes, differentiators are all added into the outline. If it's a demo or a technical challenge, the instructions and evaluation criteria are still critical, though they may not be included in a formal document. Reviewing the development of any products or solutions to ensure they truly address the requirements is still key. When you're submitting a formal proposal document or presentation, iterative reviews are crucial. How many reviews are conducted may depend on the amount of response time you have. If you have 2 weeks to respond, you may only conduct 1 or 2 reviews. You can also schedule a review each week if you have 4 or more weeks to respond. What's important is that content continues to evolve and that you're ensuring compliance with the instructions. Even if it's a commercial bid, you must address what is being asked in the solicitation, even if that solicitation document is an email or a one-page document with a few questions. For a successful review cycle, or sprint if you're agile, it's important to give reviewers enough time to review thoroughly and provide meaningful feedback. Setting expectations with writers and reviewers upfront makes this a lot smoother. So for your initial review, will you review an outline with points laying out the general approach, or do you expect to review full narrative? Is your second review expected to be final content with no gaps? And when are you reviewing specifically for compliance? It can also be helpful to have separate reviews and reviewers to look only at special content like graphics, resumes, or project write-ups. I found those content areas sometimes get overlooked as everyone tends to focus on the technical solution. Assigning reviewers is also beneficial. I give each reviewer no more than 20 pages within 8 hours. While most of us can likely read more than that at a time, it's important to consider that most reviewers have full days and other responsibilities, so they're reviewing after hours or in bursts throughout the day. The review process is such an important step in developing high-quality content. Setting clear expectations, providing enough time to review, and checking for compliance are the key steps for a successful review process. And the sample proposal process handout includes additional details on the review process. Once your content is reviewed and it's been improved and you're ready to submit, a final quality assurance check helps to catch any last-minute glitches. Someone who has not reviewed the proposal can be brought in to do a high-level review focused on things like page numbering, alignment of tables and graphics, obvious spelling issues, etc. This is not a read-through of the document, but you can review the proposal against the instructions for page count, margins, fonts. And whatever format your proposal is being submitted in, PDF, Word, PowerPoint, that's the format you should use for the white glove. Submitting 24 hours or at least 1 business day in advance of the submission deadline is industry best practice. This will help avoid any last-minute glitches, especially if you're submitting via a portal. Chances are you will not be the only one, and I have seen more than one portal slow down or even shut down as the submission deadline gets close. If you're bidding to a government customer, per the FAR, it is your responsibility to ensure they have the proposal documents in advance of the submission deadline. Run through portals early to make sure any additional information is documented. And draft your email in advance and double check those email addresses if you have to submit via email. Nothing is worse than a typo in the email address that causes a delay in your submission or worse. Now, submitting the proposal does not mean that you're done. Not only may there be a BAFO, Best and Final Offer, or FPR, Final Proposal Revision request from your customer, but you should also work to document lessons learned. There are two types that help improve your proposal content and your proposal development process. So first, you want to review the process. That is shortly after submission and includes all proposal contributors to understand how the process worked and what can be improved upon. Then, once you get your win-loss notification and subsequent debrief, you can gather the decision makers on the bid to review the debrief feedback and how to improve your future solutions, pricing, staffing, etc. Neither of these sessions should be a blame or venting session. The idea is to host a collaborative discussion to work through how to win more business. Now let's quickly talk about the team developing these proposal responses. Ideally, there's one person responsible for the overall process, communication, and essentially keeping all the ducks in a row. This is typically a proposal manager. The idea is they should not also be a writer or reviewer or have other tasks related to the development of content, unless it's a very small, easy lift. You want the proposal manager to be able to guide the process, answer questions, and hold all the contributors responsible. Now, the proposal manager should have someone they can escalate issues to. I like to call this an executive sponsor. The executive sponsor can make final decisions on the solution, pricing, staffing. They should be involved throughout the process. Someone in a leadership role who can dedicate time to the opportunity is ideal. There will also need to be a business development or a sales or a capture person. If your company is big enough, all three are great. If not, at least a BD or capture person will be the main point of contact for customer and competitive information. Because of their understanding of the competitive landscape, they're usually best suited to facilitate solution development, as well as identification of resources to support the bid and resources to include in the proposal. Pricing and contracts are two roles that go hand in hand for me. Both should be involved from the beginning, though their level of engagement is different. Pricing is going to work closely with the executive sponsor, BD, and program leadership to develop the winning price. They may use some of that debrief information that's been collected as well. Contracts will review the solicitation in addition to managing the process for teaming agreements. It is also industry best practice for contracts to submit any proposal responses, including questions to the government contracting officer. It's ideal to build that contracts to contracts relationship as early as possible. Lastly, there will be a number of rotating contributors. And by rotating, I mean these individuals likely change for each opportunity, whereas your proposal manager, BD, capture, pricing, contract staff are likely more consistent. The rotating roles may include technical subject matter experts, program leaders, or even consultants brought in to support. For everyone involved, the proposal manager is the main point of contact and ultimately responsible for a compliant and timely submission. However, the entire team supports the development of a winning submission. All right, we're at the end of this session, and I'm going to take a quick minute to highlight some common pitfalls. It's easy to think that because you've done similar work in the past, you can accomplish the work described in a SAL or PWS, even if you don't know the customer or the environment. That is the biggest mistake I've seen made on proposals. There is so much more to winning a bid than having existing quals. To be able to price well, you have to know the customer. To offer a solution that resonates and addresses all pain points, even the unwritten ones, or especially the unwritten ones, you have to know the customer. To propose the right staff to do the work, not just the ones who check the box, you have to know the customer. But even when you do know the customer and you weren't aware the solicitation was coming, first, you may not know the customer as well as you thought. And second, your customer knowledge is not enough to succeed at a bluebird. It certainly helps, but the time and effort it takes to put together a winning solution and price cannot be done in the amount of time between RFP release and submission deadline. Not solutioning early makes the entire process more painful. I've analyzed a number of debriefs across companies and industries I've worked in. The number one trend for all of them on lost bids was that we did not solution or we did not solution early enough. Bidding to get your name in front of a customer doesn't work if your proposal isn't strong. Try a white paper or unsolicited proposal instead, especially if you can't fully meet the requirements of the formal RFP. If you have to use program staff to develop proposals, that's so common and not at all an issue. What is an issue is when they're not given enough time to contribute effectively. Not only is the quality of their contribution lacking, but that SME may become burned out, overwhelmed, or even disengaged. And if that happens regularly, their program work may also suffer. So work with program staff and your existing clients to alter work schedules for those needing to support proposals. Lastly, share the news when you win or lose. What no one likes is to spend long days and nights working on a proposal, getting to the submission, and then never hearing about it again. Or worse, hearing about it offhand that you've won or lost months later. Share updates with your contributors. It will encourage them to engage more in the future, and they will feel valued and included. That's it for me. We've reviewed the purpose and language used for proposals. We've broken down solicitation requirements and gone step by step through some of the best practices. We also discussed what a proposal team can look like and what mistakes to avoid. Feel free to message me on LinkedIn with any other questions. Thank you.
Anatalia, this was amazing. I just love the information. And, it reinforces the whole business development aspect of a company. It's not that, hey, I just go to sam.gov, I see this proposal out there and just respond. I really have to have an understanding of the agency that I am working with. And that way I'm able to go ahead and tailor my proposal to that agency's needs. Oftentimes in my former life as a Apex Accelerator consultant, it was like, is there a template for proposals? And I'm like, do you mean just like a company letterhead, or each agency is unique in what they're looking for? And so I'm going to ask this question: how do you respond to somebody? Can't I just develop a proposal or a template proposal and just use that? Isn't that good enough?
That's a great question.
How would you?
Yeah, no, I love that question because I love templates. I have templates for just about everything you could imagine, from language to go into the meeting invites I send out, to the proposal documents, to compliance matrices. They make life so much easier to get started, not from a blank page. But what you were just saying about tailoring it to the customer is also critical. So when you have that template, you use it as your starting point, but you build onto it for each opportunity. But by having that template in place, you probably cut your work down by about 50%. So that other 50% is fully focused on the specifics for that customer, that opportunity, and the competition for that opportunity as well.
I think maybe that sounds like maybe another Charlie Mike I can tap on your shoulder and ask about from you. So with that, I am going to call this a wrap. And Anatalia, I am so hoping that we're going to be able to do many more many more Charlie Mikes for our viewers and listeners, because you have a lot of pearls of wisdom to share with our community. So with that, everybody, I'm going to say ciao for now and stay tuned for more. And yes, I am going to hit her up for some more Charlie Mikes, just to let you know. Okay, so bye.